Hello and welcome. In this video I would like to briefly but comprehensively explain and show you how to best set up and adjust the hi-hat on the drums. This video is an excerpt from a longer one in which I also go into the adjustment of the bass drum pedals, maintenance and so on. You can find the link to it in the description. First, make sure that all the 3 feet, sometimes you only have 2, and also the bass plate touch the ground. This ensures that the whole hi-hat stand is stable and does not slip. If the floor is uneven, it can help, if possible, to have this part in the middle slightly raised so it does not touch the floor. Then only 3 points are having contact with the ground, and as you know, a table with only 3 legs never wobbles. When I know where exactly the hi-hat should be, I press the feet down from the top, jerk it a little bit, and then tighten this screw. You can usually extend spikes at the bottom so that the pedal doesn't slip away from you while playing. But this doesn't work on very smooth floors, so you should always use a rug or a mat. If you don't have one with you, you can use a thin doormat in an emergency. The rule of thumb is that the pedal should be positioned so that your legs are in a symmetrical position when playing. My foot is further forward on this pedal relative to the bass drum, so the hi-hat is a little closer. Most designs also allow you to rotate the feet so you can find the perfect position if other stands get in the way or if you're using a double pedal. Usually you need to loosen another screw for that. What can we now adjust on the hi-hat that affects the feeling and performance of your pedal? The first is the general height of the cymbals. To change this, you loosen the clutch at the top and this screw at the bottom. Be careful, hold this tube tightly so you don't pinch your fingers. And then you set the height you want to play at. If you're playing open-handed, it's probably only slightly higher than the snare drum. If you play conventionally and rather quietly and controlled, maybe a lot on the surface, not on the edge of the cymbals, then maybe 4 to 6 inches higher than the snare. If you play very loud and need a lot of space to play the snare, then the distance may have to be very large. And of course, this also depends on your body size and seat height. Especially with children, the hi-hat, like the snare, should be nice and low so that they don't get used to hunching their shoulders. If you have set the general height, then of course you also have to fix the upper cymbal. To do this, attach the clutch. How exactly, I'll show you in a moment. Then you put the cymbals on top of each other with the screw loosened and step down the pedal as far as is comfortable for you, and then you tighten the screw. And do it firmly, because if you play with your foot, the rod will slip through and the distance will increase. If you don't play the hi-hat with your foot or play a lot of double bass drum, then the distance shouldn't be very large. But if you do more with your foot, maybe also use splashes, then the distance should be such that both pedals move about the same distance. To achieve this, put both feet on the pedals in their starting position and then move them down exactly the same way until the beater of the bass drum touches the bass drum head, and then tighten the clutch. Now both pedals travel roughly the same distance to the stopping point. Cymbal spacing is definitely a personal matter and can vary greatly depending on what and how you play. In any case, you should determine the distance with your foot and not with your hand. Apart from just being a little bit impractical, you can set the distance too large so that the cymbals don't even touch when you play the pedal. What affects the playing feel and also the sound of the hi-hat is how tightly the upper cymbal is fixed within the clutch. It should be attached like this. First the 2 lock nuts, then a felt, then the cymbal, and again a felt. The lower nut is then tightened until it stops. Tighten it also really firmly, because it can be loosened by the vibration while playing, and if that happens on stage, that's nothing you can fix again quickly. You need both hands for that. How much the cymbal moves between the felts is determined by where the lock nuts are. The bottom one sets the position and the top one is then tightened against it to keep them both in place. It should not be so loose that there is excess noise when playing with the foot. If you pull the lower nut very tightly against the cymbal on the other hand, then it can swing less, so it behaves very controlled, but sounds a bit dampened, and if you play the hi-hat open, it sizzles less, you have more of a gong sound. If you prefer this, you can of course do it this way, but since the cymbal is more tightly clamped, it can tear more easily. I would recommend to adjust it so that there is no gap between the felt and the cymbal, but it can still swing a bit. What you can also adjust is how much the lower cymbal is tilted, because cymbals are never 100% straight and neither are the felts. Besides, they should not be exactly parallel, because if you then want to play a short note with your foot, a kind of air pocket is created and it sounds muffled. For this reason, hi-hat cymbals exist where the bottom one has holes, or you can adjust them so that they are not exactly parallel but at a slight angle to each other. The lower cymbal lies on a felt, which lies on a metal plate, and you can raise or lower it on one side with this screw. The angle also affects how it sounds when you play the hi-hat slightly open. You can play around with this setting and you'll find that the impact on the sound and feel is surprisingly large. As with the bass drum pedal, you can also change the spring tension on the hi-hat. There are very cheap versions where you unfortunately cannot change that. If you are or want to become a bit more ambitious, you should definitely upgrade. How exactly you change the tension is always different. Sometimes you have a dial. Here I pull up this pin and twist this piece of plastic so it snaps into place. A high tension makes the pedal come back quickly, so if you play the hi-hat with your foot a lot, it can help. However, it then becomes tiring to keep the cymbals closed and there is background noise when you lift your foot quickly. If the tension is very low, the cymbals may not fully separate. So the pedal hardly comes back, is unresponsive, and you can't use all the possibilities of the hi-hat. As a starting point, adjust the spring so that when you lift your foot, the upper cymbal rises all the way to the top, but does not hit the top. With these settings, you already have a lot of possibilities. With some pedals, you can also change the angle of the footplate. This makes a lot of sense if you want both pedals to feel exactly the same, and especially if you frequently switch between double bass drum and hi-hat. Then the footplates should be pretty much the same angle in the resting position. I can't do that with this pedal, but I can simply cut open a cymbal felt and tape it around the bottom of the pull rod. Now it hits earlier and the pedal sits flatter, which was my goal in this case. So this is a simple hack that you can use as well. And then there are hi-hat stands, especially those with two legs, where you can change the tilt of the entire stand. For example, if you have the hi-hat very low but still want to play it on the edge, then tilt it away from you slightly. This can be especially helpful when you are playing open-handed. And then of course there are remote hi-hats with a cable with which you can freely decide where the cymbals are located. Seat height and distance to the pedal are also important factors. If you play more heel down, you should not sit too close or too low, and the pedal should not be too steep. And where your foot is on the pedal also makes a big difference. You should always keep this in mind when you change the settings. For example, if the cymbals are very far apart and you play the pedal very far forward, then the foot would have to travel quite a distance. And then there are different models that have different feel due to their drive type. But that should be enough for us at this point, because you should try it yourself anyway. If you want to see more on how to adjust the pedals, then click here for the long version of this video, where I also cover the bass drum and pedal care. If you like this, please give this video a thumbs up and also throw $1 into the donation box. Links are in the description. Thank you and see you in the next one. Take care and bye bye.